Sydney apartments at risk of collapse. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heiser here and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. Grab your stein of coffee. We're going to have a look at a few articles from the Sydney Morning Herald discussing another building with construction issues or structural issues and warnings that it may collapse, warnings of a collapse. Now we have to be cautious with some of these titles. We're in a very sensitive situation with regards to apartment constructions and just confidence in the industry in New South Wales. Let's jump over here and have a look at the good old, well, triangle of fail, as I call it. If we zoom in here, we have the Joshua apartment buildings, Sugar Cube apartment buildings, Zetland, Otto Roseberry, Mascot Towers. Here we have the Charles Street collapse warning. We zoom further out, we have Altitude, you've got Skyview Apartments, and if we go even further out, you've got Kingston Place, Verve Apartments there, and it's not just New South Wales, it's also Victoria, it's also Queensland. I don't know why they haven't appeared up on here. I probably haven't copied them over. Darwin, West Australia, Perth. There's systematic issues in our construction industry. I've discussed this in many videos. Honestly, I suspect we need to look at the method of procurement for these buildings because they're procured under a design and construct methodology, which, well, I would argue lends itself to potential conflicts of interest between those that need to police the quality of the construction process and those that are paying the bills. That's the problem. If the entire team is working under the person who's responsible for constructing it, how can you police them? Yeah, so it creates this difficult situation as a professional. I know I've been in it. I've lost clients over it. That's part of the situation when you say, no, sorry, I want to document it. I want you to build it this way. And they say, no, you're working for me. What do you think happens in that situation? So let's look at this first article from the Sydney Morning Herald written by Matt O'Sullivan. So apartment tower under threat of evacuation after warnings of a collapse. An apartment tower housing hundreds of residents in Sydney's southwest is at serious risk of collapse due to structural flaws, an engineer's report has warned, sparking an emergency meeting to decide whether it will have to be evacuated. Now, this is only a report. This is a professional opinion from one engineer. But we saw what happened over in the US, in Florida, where they had there was concerns about structural issues. The building collapsed. Sadly, people died. And, well, the engineers are going to be haunted now. Maybe they should have been tougher. Maybe they should have been stricter. Sure, it was to do there in many ways with the body corporate not maintaining the building properly and concrete cancer getting in and just growing. But maybe, I feel sorry for the engineer. That's a project you don't even want to be involved in. Maybe if I had written it tougher, maybe if I had been stricter, maybe if I had warned them more. Let's jump back over to the good old Google Earth and we'll have a look at Charles Street. We can see here it's on the river. It's not in the triangle of fail. And we will, hang on, we'll go to Street View. Let's have a look at some of these buildings here on Charles Street. There we not quite this one. There you go. You got an automated place right across the road from your nice apartment building. Here we can see. Let's go up the street a bit more. There you go. A bit sunnier. Yeah, nothing exceptional, to be honest. It's jumping out. I mean, it's an apartment building. It's nice. It's making decent use of the site, everyone. But yeah, I mean, do we have 3D buildings here? No, we probably don't. Not with this one. We'll try. So you've got, the posher ones along the river. If we go along here, you can see here. And you have the higher apartment buildings, the townhouses, the posher townhouses. There we go, along the river, with your views up in the sky. Ha! There you go. That's what it used to be. That's what it used to be, everyone. Well, definitely an improvement. What do you think? Go on, do we have another Updated image. There we go. So there's the transformation we've seen. So there's the gentrification. So definitely an improvement over what it was. So you've got the apartments at the back, and you've got these nice little townhouses at the front. Now, if we jump back over here, we can have a look at. This is a plan. I tried to get some plans of the building. I have had some trouble finding it. I couldn't find any on the council. Let me know if you have any. But this is just one of the townhouse apartments. So they've got a car space, 2 beds, a little kitchen, living, and a small balcony. So 2 small balconies. Yeah, I mean, okay. It's a shotgun apartment, guys. At least you've got 3 toilets. Hardly any storage space here. Maybe a little bit underneath the stairs, or they're leaving it open. So, yeah, there you go. And if we have a look here, we can see this is the view from the apartment balcony. So this is the money shot here that people want. So let's jump back to this article. The Herald can reveal that a structural engineer hired by owners has warned that the 10-story tower in Canterbury is a risk to occupants, and a collapse would also lead to catastrophic damage to 2 other apartment buildings which make up the vicinity complex. A group of engineers and other officials, including the state's chief emergency engineer, are due to inspect the property on the banks of the Cooks River on Wednesday afternoon. Some owners in the building have already packed their bags in case they are forced to evacuate. That seems sensible. Sadly enough, that seems sensible. Now, the precedent has been set. I mean, you don't want to risk your life over staying in an apartment. The complex on Charles Street has about 276 apartments. I mean, you've got to compete with all those people when you're buying or selling these things. You've got to all agree when you want to have major issues. Boy. It was completed 6 years ago by Two Place. A report by the structural engineer, completed on Sunday, warns that a range of serious concerns, including the magnitude of support deficiencies and loss of structural robustness and absence of fundamental structural members, puts the 10-story building at severe risk of collapse in an earthquake. Well, normally I'd be saying, well, earthquakes are so rare here in Australia, we never have them, but now, well, look at what happened in Victoria, guys. What else can be added to 2022? Just is it going to be alien invasions? Is it going to be the Ice Age or dinosaurs coming back to life? Something crazy has to happen just to round out this year, or round out next year. The 271-page report obtained by the Herald concludes that the 10-story building, which is about 100 units, is highly vulnerable to a so-called weak story collapse due to high load irregularity of shear walls, and deficiencies in the building atrium. And it warns that existing signs of heavy cracking, failed structural members, and other defects give rise to a risk of collapse without prior warning. The risk of collapse due to seismic action would be severe, it states. Two Place said in a statement that it had received expert technical advice rejecting the report by the structural engineer hired by the Owners Corporation. And this is the real thing that's going on here. There's going to be an issue, a conflict between the engineers of the developer, builder, and the engineers hired by the Body Corp. They're going to be butting heads. There's going to be differences of expert opinion and interpretation. It has to be determined who's correct. The owners, Body Corporate, they're always going to err on the side of caution. And you can't blame them. You really can't blame them. If something were to go wrong, in this situation, you'd rather be too cautious than not. The developer said its experts had found that assumptions and information in the report were plainly wrong and had resulted in incorrect conclusions. I mean, that's true. Do the engineers coming in and inspecting it have as much information as those that were there that worked on it? We don't know. We'll have to find out. The concerns about the Canterbury complex are a blow to New South Wales government attempts to boost public confidence in apartments, following Sydney's Mascot and Opal Towers debacles, which sparked a New South Wales parliamentary inquiry into construction standards and law changes. This is going to be this isn't fixed, everyone. These buildings have been built. This is from 6 years ago. This is going to be lasting for decades. For decades, the issues like this are going to manifest. The structural engineer from Rothshire, who was commissioned by the Owners Corporation, said in his report, He had lost confidence in the building's structural safety during investigations of the vicinity site. The engineer said in his report that he had concerns about the risk of collapse from the tallest building following a recent 5.9 magnitude earthquake in Victoria. He also warned that he'd witnessed excessive dilapidation of a young building over the past 2 years, and one that he believes had serious structural issues. Owner Corey Ford, 32, and her partner, 36, have packed half their possessions in their unit in case they were forced to evacuate following the meeting of engineers on Wednesday afternoon. "We don't feel safe and comfortable in our home anymore," she said. "It's very stressful. It seems like everything that is wrong with the building has coalesced into this." The couple bought a 2-bedroom apartment in the tallest building in the complex for $738,000. $738,000. This is just crazy. This is why properties go nuts. A 2-bedroom little shoebox in Canterbury, $738,000, guys. And I'm looking at that from Brisbane eyes. Brisbane, you can get a lovely house with a nice yard for that money. And any of the structural issues are completely your problem that you have to solve. If it's a good old Queenslander, get at the ag props. "We took a risk buying into a new apartment, but we didn't realize it would be this kind of risk," Ms. Ford said. "I've never been in this situation before." Well, a lot of people haven't, unfortunately. Ms. Ford said her life had turned into a nightmare as they feared they would be unable to sell their unit and were concerned that Band-Aid solutions will be applied and the building would be uninhabitable in the long term. Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's not the end of the world. They can retrofit and address structural issues. You can solve these problems. The problem is, who's going to pay for it? That's where the fight really is. We know for one thing, guys, the lawyers are going to make coin. Why did I do this architecture stuff? I should have just gotten into law. Oh, but then you have to go back and study forever. I can't do it anymore. I couldn't jump through the social justice hoops at university these days. It'd be too tough for me. We've got a situation where our structural engineer has outlined that he has a serious concern about the structural stability of at least one of the buildings in the complex, and also serious concerns about the structural stability of the slab over the basement car park, she said. Investor owner Peter Smith said he was also alarmed about the structural issues raised in the engineer's report. "It is clearly stated in the report that there are serious issues with the building," he said. "We need the government to get involved." Why? Everyone always wants the government involved. Everyone always wants the government involved. "Otherwise, people will try to sweep it under the carpet. My unit at the moment is worthless. I can't sell it or rent it unless something is done to rectify the problems." Well, they're right. About 50 owners who attended an annual meeting last Wednesday were told about the findings of the report. Ms. Ford said owners have been told informally that the building might have to be evacuated, which was a decision that would rest with government. Better Regulations Minister Kevin Anderson said he'd been advised that Fair Trading had received complaints about a 2-place development in Canterbury. The regulator will now inspect the building in consultation with the engineers from Public Works Advisor. Should any structural defects be identified, the developer will be required to rectify them under warranty as required by law. Building Commissioner David Chandler was approached for comment. The concerns about the Canterbury project come just months after Two Place agreed to provide $11 million in security to fix any future defects at a Castle Hill apartment complex, as well as agreeing to guarantee its structural integrity for the next 2 decades. You kind of want it more than the next 2 decades. Now, this has been updated, this article, so we'll jump here to the update. So, a temporary reprieve. Engineers warning of collapse. So let's have a look at the update. So they're not going to evacuate the building. The state government has decided not to evacuate an apartment tower in Sydney's southwest, despite an engineer's report warning that the building was at serious risk of collapse due to structural flaws. Now, I don't blame the engineer of raising that warning. He's going to sleep at, I'm assuming did it say male or female? Anyway, they will sleep better at night having issued this warning. Because what if something went wrong? After emergency inspections on Wednesday, New South Wales Building Commissioner David Chandler said inspectors from Public Works Advisory had advised that there was no immediate safety risk to residents of the 10-storey tower in Canterbury. They will now take the time necessary to review the materials gathered during the investigation, he said. While the building has been deemed safe for now, Mr. Chandler said there might be need for some temporary actions and further works to make the building compliant with the building code and to ensure the ongoing safety of residents. There is also likely to be a need for long-term monitoring, he said. A group of engineers and other officials, including the state's chief emergency engineer, spent hours inspecting the complex on the banks of the Cooks River on Wednesday afternoon. Some owners in the building had already packed their bags and were forced to evacuate. The inspection was sparked by a structural engineer hired by owners warning that it's at risk of collapse. Yes, I think that's the same thing. So they're going to have to update, monitor it, and have a look at it. So, guys, that's the situation here. Let's have a bit of a talk about this one. So, once again, we've got another building with potential structural issues, fears of another evacuation, fears of a collapse risk. This is a continuing issue in our construction sector. This is going to go on for years, for decades. Even any of the interventions they're attempting to do now to mitigate it will take a long time to work through. These buildings take time to build. This is one thing that happens when you get an overheated market, when you get just crazy demand. People cut corners. People do it quicker. If people just want to sell a building, they'll get it built as quick as they can. And what worries me more, honestly, is that we're losing the skills. That Australia is losing the skills and capability to thoroughly design and document a building, administer one in a traditional method, and even build it properly. I honestly think that's the bigger issue. Even now, the architectural courses, what they're getting, it's very different to what you got 10 years ago, very different to what I got, very different to what people got a decade before me. The quality of education's dropping. The expectations are different. And that's leading to, well, from our side, a lack of experience. We had one little project. It was a strata project we did, for one of these apartments. Not these ones in the example, but one up here. Little gymnasium refurb we did. And we administered the contract. That's as the architect, where we were between the builder and the client. And we were the impartial professional body in between. Sometimes I'd have to make a decision in favor of the apartment owner. Sometimes I'd have to make it in favor of the builder. All depended on the work that I produced. Now, the interesting thing with that is several of our staff got that experience. Because to register as an architect, contract administration experience is gold. It's so hard to get because no one does traditional procurement. In a lot of these type of projects, it's all design and construct. And in design and construct, you'll often work for a developer and you'll do a concept design, and that'll be sold off the plan. And then you'll be novated underneath the winning builder. So you'll now work for them. And I mean, that can work in certain situations, and it's all dependent on the builder and the tradies. But all your communication now has to go through the builder. That's your contractual relationship. You can't tell the original client, oh, they're doing something dodgy here, because then you'll wind up in a legal mess. Some big, high-quality architectural firms here in Brisbane got decimated because they ignored that. So fundamentally, I think there's an issue with the procurement method of our construction, leading to an inability of the traditional policemen in the industry, the certifiers and the architects, to keep an eye on what's going. We need to bring back a clerk of works as well. So you've got someone on site observing it. These need to be things that the public need to learn about so it can become a marketing point of difference for developers. What's, $100,000 on a multi-million project or $200,000 on a multi-million-dollar project for a clerk of works on site when you can market that, guaranteed, we've got our people on site making sure it's done right. None of the defects, none of the fear. Because there's going to have to be a drastic change. It's not just going to be, well, that'll be faster, honestly, than the government running around. But it has to be developer-driven. It has to be demand from the public. What do you think, everyone? Hopefully this will work out. Hopefully this is just an engineer erring on the side of caution. And it'll all work its way through. But honestly, this isn't the last time we're going to see this. And let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one in the comments down below, guys. like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I find and put together here, there are a few ways you can help us out. You can sign up for Twitch or for Heiser Says Live to watch our live shows. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon to help support the channel financially. You can sign up for Self-Wealth or Stake, helping with our share trading and investments. If you sign up for Self-Wealth, we each get 5 free share trades. You can buy our merch from Heiser Says, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.